Yes, magic is real. Today we're going to talk about what it is, how it works, and how you can use it to build the life of your dreams. All right, welcome back to the FMS Mastermind podcast. I'm Nathan Frazier, internet marketer with face tattoos, and today we're going to be talking about magic. And I want to give a real quick disclaimer. First of all, this is not going to be a magic channel. I plan on talking about sales and advertising and marketing way more often than I talk about magic. But I did want to dedicate at least one episode to the subject because it's something that's important to me. And this is going to sound really weird. One of my favorite copywriters, Ray Edwards, one of the things I love best about him is that he's not afraid to talk about his faith. He's a fundamental Christian and he is very open about his faith. He even talks about it in his podcast, and he occasionally makes references between the lessons he's trying to teach about copywriting and his faith and his understanding of Christianity. And even though I'm not a Christian, in fact, I might be considered on the exact polar opposite as far as religions go, I really admire the fact that Ray is willing to talk about, and it's one of the things that I love the most about him, is the fact that he's willing to talk about his faith and he's willing to incorporate it into his lessons. And so I will occasionally do that from time to time. And on this particular episode, we're going to take a break from the sales and marketing stuff and the mindset stuff, and we're going to talk about magic. Now, I do not want to turn into a full-time magic channel because I cannot stand most of the people that are into magic, and I don't want to attract a lot of the people that are into magic. And what I mean about that is a lot of the people who are really into magic, as we're going to be talking about today, I'm not talking about like sleight of hand, card trick type of magic. I'm talking about actual magic. A lot of the people that are attracted to this stuff are a little bit leaning to the left, and they're very anti-success. They hate successful people. They demonize successful people. A lot of them don't like capitalism. I'm the exact opposite. I love capitalism. I love success. I work with successful people. My job is to make them more successful. I myself am very successful, so I can't stand most of the people in the magical community. So I do not plan on making a channel that attracts those type of people. But I did want to take one episode and kind of give a little bit of an explanation as to how I see magic and maybe filter out a little bit of the audience who wouldn't like this part of me because it is a big part of who I am. Also, you know what? I'm going to give this other I'm going to start this off with a bunch of disclaimers. 3 years ago, I probably would have laughed at myself for even suggesting this episode that I'm going to do right now. And so if you are laughing or rolling your eyes and you want to check out, I won't hold it against you. Make sure you're here next episode though, because we will probably be on a different tip by then. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into it. So, like I said, right now, magic is a big part of my life, and I will occasionally talk about it in the episodes. Today, I'm going to do an entire episode about it. And even though I just said a lot of the people in the magic community are kind of left-leaning, anti-success, anti-capitalist people, the truth of the matter is, at the very top of the business world, a lot of the people there are neck deep in magic. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And a good example of this is Magic sigils worked into corporate logos. A lot of the most successful companies in the world, their corporate logos are blatant magic sigils. Take the all-seeing eye, it's everywhere in corporate logos. From AOL to Warner Brothers to CBS, a lot of corporations use the all-seeing eye as part of their logo. If you know what the Vesica Pisces is, it's two circles that overlap. It's also an occult symbol, a magical sigil. And if you don't know what it is, just look at the MasterCard logo. It is the Vesica Pisces. Look at DC Shoes. They've got the Vesica Pisces right there in their logo. Look at Chanel. Look at Gucci. Both of them, their logo is the Vesica Pisces. And if you look at Google, the Gmail logo is a Masonic apron. The Google Play symbol is a magical sigil. In fact, most of Google's logos are actually magical symbols, and almost all of them use the 4 elemental colors. They use red, blue, green, and yellow, which are for fire, water, earth, and air. So Google, arguably one of the most successful businesses in the world, is neck deep in magical sigils being intertwined with their corporate logos. So even if you don't take magic seriously, even if you think it's just hocus pocus and bullshit, the most successful people in the world take it very seriously. And in fact, the majority of the best motivational coaches out there, success coaches out there, self-development people out there are actually teaching magical principles, just thinly veiled. And I think it's so that they don't scare off their audience. And one last disclaimer before we dive deep into this: I am not a master magician. So what I'm going to be talking about may change and evolve over time as my knowledge and understanding grows. And in fact, coming from the conspiracy theory background that I do, I used to think that magic was all evil and Illuminati, New World Order type stuff. So for most of my life, I intentionally remained ignorant to a lot of this stuff. But in my mid-20s, I started discovering books like As a Man Thinketh and Think and Grow Rich, and I started changing my mindset and the way that I looked at things and the way that I thought about things. And I noticed that the world around me started to change. My circumstances started to change. My opportunities started to change. The way people interacted with me started to change. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was practicing a very subtle form of magic, and I was seeing some pretty amazing results. Okay, so let's start by building a foundation and explaining my understanding of what magic is. And the best way I've seen it explained is in the book, The Caballon, and the first Hermetic principle. They have 7 Hermetic principles that they discuss in that book. And the first one is all is mind and the universe is mental. And what I take that to mean is that there's one consciousness to the whole universe. In fact, the universe itself is consciousness. And we're just a fractal piece of that consciousness experiencing itself from an individualistic point of view. In the Bible, they say God created man in his own image. I believe that the universe itself is a conscious being, and our individual consciousness is a reflection of that grander consciousness. And I think that there's 3 specific kinds of consciousness. There's the outer level consciousness that we know of, that we are aware of, the inner dialogue going on in our head, the things that we think about, the things that we consciously pay attention to. Then there's the subconscious mind, the consciousness that's in the background, the thing that's running all the background programs, that's running all the automated systems that help make our decision making and our everyday life more manageable and easier to get through. And then there's the meta-consciousness, the outside consciousness, the ether, the entire universe, the consciousness of the universe. And science is pretty conclusive about the fact that the brain is a receiver. The brain takes in all of this information and does its best to put it together and manufacture a reality for us. It takes in inputs through the eyes and inputs through the ears and through the other senses and tries to build reality for us based off of those inputs. So the brain is a receiver, but I believe that the brain is also a transmitter, that it doesn't just operate inside of the skull, but it also operates outside of the skull. And when we look at other animals in the animal kingdom and we see the way that birds fly in a flock and they seem to just instinctively know where the flock is going, or a school of fish instinctively knows all of the fish at the same time, they turn direction and avoid predators or whatever it is that they're doing, it seems pretty clear that some animals have a almost psychic ability to talk with each other. Well, it's my belief that human beings have that same ability. And not just to talk with each other, but to talk with the universe at large, to communicate with the meta-consciousness. When I was younger, I had this uncanny ability, something that they call telephone telepathy, where I would know that the phone was about to ring before it would ring, and I would even know who it was that was going to call, or I would know that the door was about to knock, somebody was about to knock on the door, and I'd know who it was before the door even knocked. And it used to creep people out because I'd be like, oh, Christy's about to call for Sarah. And everybody'd look at me, and then the phone would ring, and it'd be Christy asking if my sister was there. And it happened on on way more than one occasion, to the point where people kind of just looked at me weird when it would happen, but it would happen very consistently. So there's that. There's also stories of like family members, two twins. One of them gets in an accident halfway across the world, and before they have a chance to let the other twin know, the other twin has a sense of pain in their left leg, and then they get a call and their other twin is in the hospital, and they're like, what happened? And they're like, I was in a car accident and I got my left leg severed, and now I no longer have my left leg. And at the same time that they had the accident, the twin on the phone, the other end of the phone, that was when they were experiencing the pain in their left leg. And then there's the much more relatable experience that probably everybody has had, which is when somebody walks into a room and the room's mood instantly changes based off of that person's presence. And you might not even know that that person's in a bad mood or a good mood or whatever the case may be, but they walk in and your energy level just shifts by their presence. And we can't really explain what that is, but what I believe it is their subconscious affecting the meta consciousness around them, and then your brain, your consciousness absorbing that energy. So what I believe that magic is the ability to tap into that meta consciousness and influence reality, and then look into the future and know that there's a bunch of different possibilities. I could be rich, I could be poor, I could be struggling, I could be flourishing, I could be happy, I could be sad. This could go my way, this could not go my way. All of these different possibilities that are out there, you look into the future and you say, this is the one that I want. This is the one that I'm going to focus on. And not just work towards making it happen, but actually send a signal out to that meta consciousness and say, hey, out of all those possibilities, this is the one that I want to manifest. This is the one that I want to attract. This is the one that I want to move and shift reality towards. Magic is the understanding that this consciousness that's out there, you have a direct line to it, and you can influence reality based off of your communication with that meta consciousness. You consciously choose which direction you want reality to move towards. You plant it in your subconscious mind, and then you release it out into the metaconscious universe, and then you let the metaconsciousness pull reality in that direction. And for me, that's what magic is all about, is taking a more active role in the direction that my life is going. And there are different ways of doing it. There's different rituals, there's different cultures, there's different meditations. There are a ton of different ways of understanding it, but that's my way of understanding it. The more control you have over your conscious mind, the more control you can exercise over your subconscious mind. And the more control you have over your subconscious mind, the more influence, the more effective your magic will be. And like I said, I've been doing this part of magic, this type of practicing, since my mid-20s, not really realizing that's what I was doing. I was just working on my mindset and working on my belief systems, and I thought it was just a coincidence that my influence over everything around me continually kept growing, not understanding what a coincidence actually is. So now I might do some sigil magic, or I might put my desire out into the universe and the universe delivers me exactly what I was asking for. And people might say, oh, that's just a coincidence. But a coincidence is a coincidence. Like coworkers are two or more people working towards a common goal, or co-conspirators are two or more conspirators working towards a common conspiracy. A coincidence is two or more incidences working towards a common outcome, a common desired outcome. So yes, it might be a coincidence, but that doesn't mean it's not a direct result of my conscious efforts or my ritual practices. And this is what really kicked off this whole rabbit hole for me. And I almost feel ridiculous talking about this, but back in Halloween of 2019, I decided, you know what? I want to read a really scary book. What's a really good scary book that I can read? And so I picked up Stephen King's The Stand. This was October 2019. I'm like, yeah, this sounds like a good scary book to read. And I start reading it, and it's about a virus that escapes from a laboratory, and it ends up infecting and killing a majority of the world's population. And right as I'm finishing up reading the book, Strange reports start coming out of China about this new virus that maybe escaped from a laboratory and was probably going to infect and kill a large part of the world's population. And I'm thinking to myself, man, that's a weird coincidence. But I didn't think too much of it, and I went on to my next book, and the next book that I read right after The Stand was Atlas Shrugged, and it's about the global economy collapsing and the incompetence of corporate and world leaders to hold things together, and as things get worse, the people demand more government control over the economy, and right as I'm done reading Atlas Shrugged, Klaus Schwab starts coming out and talking about the Great Reset, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, how strange is it that I just read The Stand right before the coup hit, and I just read Atlas Shrugged right before the Great Reset starts getting promoted by the World Economic Forum? And to be honest, I started to kind of feel like I was going crazy. Like, are we really living in the Matrix here or something? And then in the middle of all that, I'm recording a podcast episode with my friend Brett Venat, the School Sucks podcast. And we're talking about, because all of the swimming pools are closed down and my daughter Bella, she loves going swimming. And we're talking about, well, what are we doing to deal with the fact that kids can't live a normal life anymore? And I told him, you know what? I just take my daughter up to Horsetooth Reservoir and we go swimming up there. It's a reservoir out in the mountains. And we go swimming up there once or twice a week. Since we can't go to the pool anymore, we've just been going to the reservoir. We're not going to let Corona stop us from living our lives. And then about 6 months after that podcast episode is released, I get this strange message in my inbox in Facebook from some guy being like, hey, do you live in Fort Collins? And I'm like, what kind of creepy stalker question is that? And it's this guy, and he says he's been listening to podcasts about marketing, and he heard me talking about swimming at Horsetooth Reservoir with my daughter, and he says, hey, I live right by Horsetooth Reservoir, and I'm looking for a marketer, I'm looking for a copywriter to help us market our product, and I really dug the episode that you were talking about. As I was listening to it, I was like, this guy gets it. And then after you've already sold me that you know what you're talking about, I hear you saying that you like to go swimming at Horsetooth Reservoir. Well, I live right next to Horsetooth Reservoir. My business, you can literally see Horsetooth Reservoir from my backyard where my business is at. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. That's a strange coincidence. And so I meet the guy after a couple of interactions on Facebook, and he's turned into one of my favorite clients. Actually, hands down, he's my favorite client. And because of some stuff that he deals with, we start talking about consciousness, and he starts telling me about some of his experiences and what he thinks about consciousness. And so we start having these discussions about the nature of reality, the nature of consciousness, what it's all about. And it's while I'm going down this rabbit hole. So he enters my life at the exact same time that all of these other strange synchronicities and coincidences are happening all around me, to the point where I can't just ignore this stuff anymore. And it's exactly at that time that another friend recommends the Caballon, and I read it and I realize I've been living these hermetic principles for years, and I just wasn't aware that that's what I was doing. And I start realizing that all of this mindset stuff that I've been working on for the last 20 years of my life, all of this personal development stuff, all of these books by Napoleon Hill and James Allen and Tony Robbins and all of these people that I've been studying their work, I start realizing that everything that they'd been teaching me and everything that I'd been practicing for the last 20 years of my life is codified and clarified in this book, The Caballon. And The Caballon, if you don't know, is a book about Western Hermeticism. It's a book about Western magic. And I realize I've been practicing magic for the last 20 years of my life, not realizing it, and while doing so, having amazing results from it. I've been doing magic this whole time, unconsciously, undeliberately, and so I do this deep dive down the rabbit hole of what magic is, all of the different traditions, and I'm at the point now where I'm starting to slowly realize what type of magic works for me. And without revealing too many details, I have used Sigil Magic for the last 2 product launches that I was involved with. And for my last product launch, I had a specific number that I wanted to hit. And I intentionally put it out into the universe with some Sigil Magic and ran a 3-day promotion. And at the end of the 3 days, I hit the exact number that I set out to hit. Okay, and the other instance, and this was actually my first attempt at doing any kind of ritualistic magic. I did a piece of Sigil Magic for one of my clients. We had just ran 2 days of promotions for a bundle pack that he was selling, and we had a 3-day promo. And before we started losing steam on the promotion, we had 1 day left. I wanted to get the most out of it, but I really just wanted our business relationship to be successful. So I did my very first actual ritualistic sigil magic. I charged a sigil, I released it out into the universe, and I went to bed and I didn't think anything more of it. And the next day I had completely forgot about it, went to the office, was working on some copy, and the client, Scott, comes in and he says, "Hey guys, I think there's something broken with our reporting system." And me and the other guy that are working there, we look at him, we're like, "What's up?" And he's like, "Can you guys take a look at this? We've been getting all these weird orders. I think there's some kind of weird double reporting going on or something. We don't get this many orders in a day. Something weird is going on. Can you look at it and see what's up? Something looks like it's broken." We look at it. Nope, nothing's wrong. We're just getting a crazy amount of orders that day. And I can't say that it was the magic that I did, but it was one of those things when we realized that, yes, there was no mistake. We were getting that many orders. The first thing I thought was, oh shit. Oh shit. So that was crazy. And that pretty much solidified the fact that this is going to be a part of my life. I'm going to keep practicing it, and I'm going to keep doing this stuff going forward. Now, before I close out this show, I do want to give a thank you to some of my longtime friends who are intentionally or unintentionally masters of this stuff, and I didn't realize were actually leading me down this path the whole time. So shout out to my buddy Shannon. I'm going to respect your privacy. I'm not going to give out your last name, but you know who you are. You have been an invaluable blessing in my life. Shout out to Seamus. Again, not going to give out your last name. You know exactly who you are. You also have been an invaluable blessing in my life. And much love and a shout out to Pradeep Sangha, who I work with on the Male Entrepreneur podcast, because he approaches a lot of this stuff from an Eastern philosophy point of view. He's from India, and he has a different background. I approach it from a Western point of view. He approaches it from an Eastern point of view, but his point of view is invaluable to me as well. So much love, Shannon, Seamus, and Pradeep. Without you guys, I would not be this far along down the path that I am, and I wouldn't be experiencing the miracles in my life right now that I am. So much love and thank you so much. And to recap, this is just my understanding. This is just my experience with this stuff. And there's still a lot of it that I'm not quite clear about, but I am quite certain about the stuff that I talked about today. And so let's just go through it. Reality is malleable. The universe has a consciousness, and we're either part of that consciousness or we can influence that consciousness. And the more you master your own thoughts, the more you master your own consciousness, the more you master your subconsciousness, the more you can influence reality to bend in your favor. And most people practice magic unintentionally, and that's why they get bad results. They don't control the way they think. They don't control the things that they think about. And so they keep attracting all of this stuff into their life that they're not really wanting, but they are practicing magic. The reason that they're getting the results that they're getting is because they're pulling this stuff into their life through their thoughts, through their intentions, not understanding it and not consciously taking control of how they think and what they place their intentions on. Magic is doing it intentionally. There are different ways to make this stuff work. There's different rituals, there's different meditations, there's different practices. They come from different cultures, and depending on what culture you come from, one way might work better than another way. If you decide to start exploring this stuff, you need to find what works for you. And like I said, there's a lot of stuff that I'm still fuzzy about, but the consciousness stuff I'm certain of. And that's the foundation of my practice. That's the foundation of my magic. So if you enjoyed this episode, if you have something to contribute to the conversation, make sure you leave it in the comments down below this video. And if you're not an anti-capitalist lefty who's also into magic, feel free to subscribe. Occasionally, I will do more episodes like this. My name's Nathan Frazier. I'm a marketer, I'm a magician, and I'm out of here. Deuces. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you always catch the content we create for you in the future.